Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call today's regular meeting of council to order. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I'd like to call today's meeting to order. First order of business is adoption of the agenda. Council, are there any changes to today's agenda? Seeing nothing from council administration, are there any changes to the agenda?
Through the chair to council, I would like to request that we add one item on 6.6, and that's the next week's committee date. We'd like to add that as a proposal to move it to Monday.
Okay, thank you, administration. Council, there is a request to make an amendment to the agenda. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr.
Chair.
Oh,
There you go.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to move that we add 6.6 to this evening's agenda, the discussion of next week's committee date.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Haas. Council, is there any comments or discussion? Okay, seeing nothing from council, if we could see the motion, please. My apologies, my Civic Web isn't connecting. I don't know why. Well, it's trying on its very own and it just won't do it. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm not getting the motion though. So we'll just, we'll vote by hand then for this one. There's a motion that council add 6.6 date change for committee of the whole meeting to September 25th. And I do have it before me now. So we'll vote electronically. Please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. So we will add item 6.6 committee of the whole date to action items. Okay, with that, if there's no additional changes to the agenda, Councillor Haas.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda for September 19th as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion from council, then if we could see the motion that council adopt the agenda as amended. Council, please vote now. That's carried unanimously. So that brings us to our council minutes for adoption. Council. Councillor Magoon. Sorry, I do not know what's going on here today. It seems to be working. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that we adopt the regular council meeting minutes for September the 5th, 2023, and the committee of whole meeting of September the 12th, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor, are there any discussion on the motion? Seeing nothing from council. There's a motion that council adopt the regular council meeting September 5th, 2023, and committee of the whole meeting September 12th, 2023 minutes. Council, if you could please vote now. And that is also carried unanimously. That brings us to citizens minute with council. Are there any citizens present here today who would like to address council? If so, please come forward. Okay. If there's no one in person who would like to address council, are there any citizens who've requested to address council via Zoom?
No, there are none.
Thank you. That moves us on to 5.1, or sorry, to section 5, delegations and presentations. 5.1, Hinton Pickleball Association, presented by Karon Durand and Susan Armstrong.
There.
There we go.
Thank you so much, Chair. Hinton Pickleball Association. I am the president of the club, and Harold Kakaitis is the vice president. Sue Armstrong is the secretary, and Shelley Byrne is our treasurer, and Dale Woloshin and Mark Richardson are directors from our last meeting of March 2023. And how do I click this? Just click. Okay. This picture here indicates some of our Hinton Pickleball Club members of 2019. As you can see, whoa, why did that work? How do you go back, Shelley? Or how do you go back? I didn't want to do that one previously. Must have previous times. It has a time. Okay. I don't want to tap time. Anyways, it started with 30 members and now we have 80 plus as of 2023. Hinton Ball Association is now a non-profit as of 2023. We did our information night that you guys hosted a couple of weeks ago, and we had 30 participants that would like to be introduced into the Pickleball Association. And we have 2 times set up for this Friday and Saturday, and they are full. So that is great. So that's 24 new people as of hopefully the end of the week. These are the old courts. As you can see, they're not very nice. It was tennis courts and stuff. So, and now fall of 2022, we got 6 outdoor courts, and they are wonderful to play on, well maintained, beautiful. Everybody loves them. Crescent Valley School, we just got our times this year. Awesome. Saturdays, lots of time. We have all of Crescent Valley School, which will be utilized quite a lot when the winter obviously comes. We also had the curling club courts when it was very cold outside or it was windy, raining. We didn't have as much as we had last year, but hopefully next year they'll be a little bit different. So for summer 2024, we're looking for the curling club to have more hours because the weather in Hinton is, very sporadic, can change on a dime. So we're looking for a little bit more support for from May to about mid-September, Monday to Friday. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we had this year from 5 to 9, and Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 till 2. We are looking for a little bit more time on the weekends and a little bit more time during the day. This is, we had an intermediate clinic of the curling rink in the spring of 2023. Those were the participants. We had an introduction of pickleball again, the spring of 2023, and it was on the outside courts. We had introduction to pickleball in the spring of 2022 at the curling rink. And when I was in Mexico, this is the most becoming sport in the whole world, and they are changing everybody's tennis courts to pickleball courts. It is amazing because when I went there the year before, it was all tennis, and now it's all pickleball. So we're just inquiring about a few things, and I hope this one will stay longer than needed. The status of the Harry College courts. We know that there was supposed to be some maintenance going on there. The status on the Durand courts, they are cracking badly throughout the whole pickleball courts and the tennis courts. And I know they were just done last year. We also know that there is a noise complaint, and it is very loud when you get about 6 courts going. It's extremely loud and it can be very monotonous for the people that live around there. So we're looking for maybe some sort of sound barrier at Durand, especially at the west side of the court. A porta potty would be kind of nice for the people that have to, play there. Maybe installation of lights at the pickleball courts, and maybe 2 more nets because 2 of the courts there do not have stationary nets. We're also looking perhaps for some usage agreement for the summer times, Monday to Sunday at the curling rink. And maybe a discussion further down the road of a capital reserves for a future for all sports to be enjoyed all year round. We'd like to thank you so much for allowing us some time to air out some of our concerns. And we'll let you know that a great sport pickleball is. It's very fun for all ages. Any questions?
Great, thank you for that. So I will open the floor to questions. Councillor Taylor.
As forewarned,
Mhm.
what's the, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but I have to ask it because other people have to pay fees. This could be for administration too. And I don't know what the town, what you using the, that school costs us if we have to pay, what do you call that, cleaning fees or anything like that.
I'm not sure what the town does for
So
that service.
my question is, a lot of the people that use our facilities, be it rec centers or anything else, pay fees. So how much does pickleball pay for fees that eventually go to the town?
Good question.
Would that be appropriate? Like if you're using the schools and we're having to pay cleaning fees, then that'd be part of the recreation program. Is that part of the recreation program and our fees associated to the use of our swimming pool or rec centers, those kind of things? Anybody can answer that.
Houses that I'm or the outside courts. I don't know if we pay for going to a park or playing, at a park that's, open to anyone to use. So I'm not sure. But I know that the pickleball club itself, we have a $50 membership fee, and that includes $16 that goes to insurance, so that we have our own insurance. So if we go into the school, that's paid for. And if we have to go on the courts or if we go in the curling rink, that insurance is paid. So the liability is on the Alberta Hinton Pickleball Association. And then the other $34 that we collect per person is for nets. It's for, I think we gave honorarium to the school last year towards their educational phys ed program. Unless we have to pay outside of that, I'm not sure what that, fee would be.
Okay. And the follow-up would be perhaps to administration. The last I heard was that we were going to try to get agreements going with the schools. Those agreements potentially were going to have us covering the cost of the janitors. So are we paying for janitors, and is there an opportunity to recover some of that through recreation fees like we do in other facilities, or is this being provided to us in this particular case completely without these fees?
So to administration, I'm not sure that as their delegation before us, and administration didn't prepare a report. I'm not sure if you're prepared to speak to that today, but to administration, CEO Panasic.
Sure, through the chair to members of council. I don't have that report specific to the schools. But what I can say is that we do have an agreement with one of the divisions, and we do have an intention on bringing that forward at the first committee meeting in October. That will have everything outlined in terms of fees on the joint use of those facilities, but that'll be a discussion for that day.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So just for council's information and administrations too, I guess, we're having a bit of a technical difficulty here. When the council members are keying their mics to get in the speakers queue, their mics are going live. I don't know how to adjust that. So I'll just have to. Oh, they're all gone. I had Councillor Magoon was in queue, and then Councillor Race. Oh, did it reboot and now it's working? Seems like maybe it is.
Perfect.
Councillor Magoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll start with this question to, I think really it's administration. But again, I understand, as Councillor Ostashik had mentioned, that this wasn't a prepared report. So if administration needs to get back with the information, totally understandable. I am just curious about the resurfacing at Harry College High School. What the status of that was, because I know we had added that to an earlier budget. And I'm just curious if that had gotten pushed back a year. I'll start with that.
Through the chair, I will refer that to Ms. Juke.
Thank you. And through the chair to the rest of council. So the project came actually to council's attention in two parts. One is the overlay project itself, and then the resurfacing itself, and then the asphalt overlay, which was suggested by the company. So the asphalt overlay was approved a little bit later on in the year. And that has been completed right now. And we're just waiting for the contracted overlay itself.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Magoon. I have Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for being here today and presenting. So being a nonprofit, are you taking advantage of our community grant intakes twice a year?
We're not quite. And then we have to be 1 year into the bylaws to actually apply for grants.
Okay.
So we're in that process. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I think it's important that at least during capital budget and operating time, we consider these first three items. The fourth one's too big to consider. Has to be done in a strategic thing. So I wanted to make sure that my motion will be that council direct administration to bring the Pickleball Association's first 3 points forward to our capital and operating budget sessions. That doesn't mean they'll be funded. That means they'll be put in the mix with all the other funding. And if there's money available, or if we're desperately short of money, that might affect what you get, or if you get anything. But at least it'll be considered.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. So council, there is a request for a motion before us. We'll just make sure administration captured that. Councillor Taylor, if you want to just have a look at that and make sure that's the.
Bring forward the Pickleball Association's first 3 requests to council's capital and operating budget sessions. That's perfect. Thank you. I think that gets it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we do have the motion. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to it? Councillor Magoon and then Councillor Race.
First of all, I'd just like to thank the Pickleball Association for bringing forward the noise barrier concern. I know I've actually heard from several residents in that area that they'd said it's much louder now than it ever has been. So I think clearly that's something that we need to look at moving into the future. So thanks for being empathetic towards the people who are living there, and thanks, Councillor Taylor, for making the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To administration, any of the 3 items that Councillor Taylor has brought up, are any of them being worked on right now?
Through the chair to members of council, the capital project plan for the sound barrier has already been complete. I would have to check in on the status of the other 2, but it's certainly something that we're at least aware of, and I don't think it would require a great deal of resources. Chair, if I could speak to the motion itself.
Certainly, I have some questions about it too.
Sure. I don't have any problems with the intent of the motion. My only suggestion is to specifically list the 3 projects that are out there so the motion can stand on its own without reference.
Thank you for that suggestion, CO Panasic. Yeah, that's what I was going to bring forward too. If we could expand that to get some clarity on which exact bullet points you'd like to have added, Councillor Taylor.
Perfect. Do you want me to list them off for you, or just take them from the presentation?
If you could just read them from the presentation, that would be.
Direct administration to bring forward the Pickleball Association's proposal for sound barrier. Is it sound barriers at Durand? west side of court. Sunbury or at Durand dash west side of court. 2, porta potty and installation of lights by pickleball courts and 2 more nets. 3, curling rink usage agreements for the summer times Monday to Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, are there any comments, questions, debate? Councillor Race?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to split this porta potty standalone, installation of lights stands alone, and 2 more nets. That one is not hinged to the other.
Sorry, Councillor Race, just for clarification, are you asking for point 2 to be split from the motion? Or are you asking point 2 to be split into 3 motions?
I would like installation of lights to be seen as number 3, 2 more nets to be seen as number 4, and 5 would be curling rink usage.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Race. That understanding that this is one motion though with 3 points to it. So if there was an appetite to split the motion, it would have to be split into multiple motions. I think CEO Panasic would like to add something.
Through the chair to members of council, I do see Councillor Race's point. What we can do is I'm comfortable with the motion as is, and as a part of the capital project plan, we will be bringing forward the individual costs associated with it, but we can have those all outlined. So I don't know if it's necessary to split them out here, but we'll certainly provide itemized costs on all of those. Have been included in the motion.
Okay, thank you for that. With that additional information, then are you happy with it the way it is?
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Haas?
Yeah. I appreciate Councillor Race's the question, and I get where administration is coming from. I guess, and because the pickleball representatives are here and won't be part of the meeting, I need to just understand one quick thing, if I may. It's about the installation of the lights, because in my mind, majority of this is done during the summer. By the time it gets dark, it's pretty late as it is with the concern of the noise. So that's where I'm at, is kind of where those lights come into play, because as soon as it gets probably to the point where you need them, it's too cold possibly to play anyway. So I'm just trying to understand the intent of the installation of lights. And I don't want to get into the debate, Mr. Chair, of course, of the, because I want to see it, but I won't have that opportunity to ask that question at that time, if I can have some leeway.
Yep, that makes sense. If you have that information.
Lights. Well, because the other side of the court has lights with tennis and we just, and it just seems, because sometimes it's, gets a little bit darker, and there's some fanatics out there that do play past, 8 o'clock in the evenings, and, because they have work or whatever. So it'd be nice if you could put a bit of lights back there, but I can understand your point. I mean, it would be blinding for the neighbors as well. So we don't necessarily want that as well, but it's just something that we thought of that might be something more useful for Pickleball Association, but it's not a necessity for sure.
Okay. No, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. So council, we don't currently have anyone in the speakers queue. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask questions or speak to the motion? Okay, not seeing anyone. If we could see the motion, please. Okay, there's a motion that council direct administration to bring the Pickleball Association's first 3 requests to council capital and operating budget sessions. Number 1, sound barrier at GRCCS west side of court. Number 2, porta potty and installation of lights and 2 more nets. Number 3, curling rink usage agreement for summer months, Monday to Sunday. Council, if you could please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Councillor Taylor.
Administration, when you provide those costs during budget time, you provide the pros and cons of each option too?
Administration.
Through the chair, absolutely, we will.
Thank you for that. Council, is there anything further for the Pickleball Association? Okay. Seeing nothing further from council, I'd like to thank you guys for coming and presenting to us today. That was great. And it's certainly exciting to see how pickleball is growing in our community. Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
That brings us to section 6, action items. 6.1, resignation of Councillor Brian LaBerge. Administration. Oh, sorry, Councillor Magoon.
I'll wait until after the report.
Okay, no problem. Administration.
Thank you, Chair. To the rest of council, on Wednesday, September 13th at approximately 9 a.m. Councillor Brian LaBerge, not Brian LaBerge, that's my apologies, provided the Chief Administrative Officer his official resignation in order to pursue the mayoral by-election in November. As per section 161, the Chief Administrative Officer does have an obligation to provide this information to council in a formal setting at the next meeting. That's everything. We are recommending that council simply accept the resignation of Councillor Brian LaBerge for information.
Okay. Thank you. See, open asset council. Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make the recommended action that council accept the resignation of Councillor Brian LaBerge for information.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Magoon. Did you want to speak to it? No. Okay. Council, is there any discussion or questions or debate? Okay, seeing nothing from council, if we could see the motion, please. There's a motion before us. The council accept the resignation of Councillor Brian LaBerge for information. Council, if you could please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, council. That takes us to action item 6.2, protective services, fire and rescue services, LOS policy PS 2306 to administration.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. I will turn this one over to Mr. DeBodra.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, Your Worship. Pardon me, Mr. Chair and members of council. Before you this afternoon is for council consideration is the Protective Services Fire and Rescue Level of Service Policy PS 2306. The level of service policy presented is a more comprehensive document than policy 30 that it replaces. It outlines the fire rescue services branch approach to general emergency responses, structural, wildland, flammable liquid and other fires, dangerous goods incidents, rescue calls, medical assist calls, fire prevention and community safety activities, and mutual aid agreements. At the Committee of the Whole recently, committee directed administration to provide information on active fire smart and wildland fire prevention services and present it with this policy at a regular council meeting, which brings us to tonight. The Complete Fire Smart program encompasses 7 key elements: legislation and planning. This element involves the development and implementation of policies, regulations, and guidelines to mitigate the risk of wildfires. It includes measures such as zoning regulations and building codes, land use planning, and to promote fire-resistant communities and landscapes. community education and outreach, and vegetation management, two more elements, are the two elements which we have been most involved with in Hinton. The development of standards and building codes and standards, which we have slowly been introducing into our plans we've been slowly introducing the fire smart concepts into our plans for future development within the town. Emergency planning. The fire smart concepts have been built into our municipal emergency plan. And cross training. All of our volunteer firefighters are introduced to wildland firefighting techniques in their first year of training. Several of our members are trained in wildland urban interface firefighting techniques, and our officers receive the wildland urban interface leadership training. This new level of service policy could include a formal commitment to maintain a fire smart program by including an additional clause in section 5.8, which is fire prevention and community safety, to read to the effect, the town will maintain a fire smart program with the initiative subject to available grant or municipal funding. Administration is recommending the action that council approve protective services level of service policy PS 2306. And Mr. Chair, with that, if there are any questions from council, I would be pleased to answer.
Great. Thank you, Chief DeBeaudrop. Council, are there any comments or questions? Councillor Taylor.
No. Well, I'd like to make a motion that we include the additional clause 5.8. Fire prevention and community safety. That reads, the town will maintain a fire smart program with initiatives subject to available grant and municipal funding to the draft. I don't want to speak to it because I spoke to it last time about the importance of wildland fires to the community and us doing everything we can to set the fire department up for success, and this would be part of that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just look to administration to make sure they captured that motion before we go to the floor. Okay, Councillor Taylor, if you could repeat your motion so that it could be captured, please.
To include additional clause 5.8. Which will read, the town will maintain a fire smart program with initiatives subject to available grant and municipal funding into policy PS 2306.
Or if you could just back up a little bit, Councillor Taylor.
The town will maintain a fire smart program with initiatives subject to available grant or municipal funding. And include that additional clause into policy 2306. Thanks.
Councillor Taylor, if you could just have a look and make sure that that's the intent of your.
I think that covers it, basically. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, we have a motion before us. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my question for administration is certainly I understand the intent behind, or I support and understand the intent behind the motion. But understanding the Fire Smart program is just a singular approach. Would it be beneficial if there was perhaps a little bit more open verbiage where we might say something to the effect of we'll maintain an urban interface prevention program, which then sort of opens the doors to any available program, not just Fire Smart?
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Administration.
Through the chair to all of council, that suggestion has merit. The Fire Smart program is a trademark. It's a trademark program. Doesn't mean it will exist in perpetuity. It is a program that is well established in Alberta and Western Canada, but it doesn't mean it will last forever. Fire Smart is also not the only fire prevention initiative that the Fire Rescue Services undertakes. We have Learn Not to Burn programs. We have several programs that we provide in that community safety and fire prevention area. We do load occupancies certificates. We do inspections, commercial inspections, some residential inspections upon request, firework permits. There's a lot of processes that are in place that aren't named specifically in the policy, but we do them as a matter of our business, daily business. So the Fire Smart program, if it was worded that it was more of a wildland fire prevention initiatives, that would make sense to me, and it opens us up to other programs as well.
If I could follow up, Mr. Chair, I'm just curious if Councillor Taylor would buy into a friendly amendment, if he would support a friendly amendment that reflects that.
Councillor Taylor. Yep. Okay. Did you have some suggested wording, Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, in this case, I'd like to support the wording from Fire Chief de Beaudrap, because I mean, ultimately, it's going to be the policy that, you know, I'm sort of basing his expertise on. But I think a wildland urban interface program, if that's what he had suggested, that verbiage would work.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Magoon. So if we could look to Chief de Beaudrap for some assistance in crafting the wording of the motion.
Through the chair, I would simply change it to wildland urban interface fire prevention initiatives. And I'd take out program interface initiatives, yeah. Which would include the Fire Smart program.
Okay, so should Fire Smart stay then, or should it be removed? Take Fire Smart out too? Okay. So Councillor Taylor, I do have you in queue, but are you okay with that? You're good? Okay, and you're out of queue. Okay. Okay, we have a slightly modified motion before us now, Council. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, seeing no additional comments or questions from, oh, sorry, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah,
You're good. Yep. You're good.
because that says subject to available grants and municipal funding. Does that have budget implications now that we should know about, or as they come up, how's that going to work exactly? Like, to me, if there's a grant and we can get it, I'm not, Fire Smart to me was a distinct thing, and there were grants and we work aggressively to get those grants. The other stuff, I'm quite not sure.
Administration.
Through the chair to the rest of council. What we would do is, I believe that the Fire Smart program as it exists is still a very good tool, and we would let, you know, on a yearly basis, we'll continue to apply for those grants. But if we don't get those grants and we believe that there's something that might be critical to fire prevention in the community that doesn't prevent administration from coming forward with a project plan in the budget process for council to consider on its own merits, but I think that leaves it open enough for us to consider those types of initiatives as they come available.
Thanks.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. Seeing no one else in queue, I do have a question, and I guess the question would be for Councillor Taylor. With the inclusion of the wording of municipal funding, would the expectation be that a Fire Smart or sorry, not a Fire Smart, I guess, a wildland urban interface initiative would come forward through the budget every year, and it would either be funded by grants or municipal funding? And I ask because with the wording of that, technically you could make the argument that there's always municipal funding available, whether it's through taxation or reserves. Is that the intent? No,
My intent would be that the municipal funding would come.
1 second, Councillor Taylor. Go ahead.
My intent would be, it would be grants or municipal funding through budget time. That those would be like large distinct projects of some sort, or it would be a purchase of something we need to do urban wildlife fire interface or something like that. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, I'm gonna ask an additional follow-up then. Is the discretion about whether it comes forward or not given to administration, or is that a council decision about whether a wildland urban interface initiative is funded or not? The way I read that, something's gonna come forward every budget cycle. I'm just asking if that was the intent or if there's some discretion allowed.
I haven't thought that one through much. I would think that smaller items there would be discretion on, and larger, bigger, distinct purchases that are unique would come to us through budget time.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Chair, to the rest of council. So the way that I would interpret that from administration, I'd agree with Councillor Stewart. There is a little bit of discretion for working within your budget, but those larger items would have to come forward to council. But what that clause tells administration is that there's no guarantee for those initiatives, and they're contingent on funding on a year-to-year basis. And you can't, this will not be a regularly budget thing. And if there are initiatives that are being requested to be municipally funded, those are going to have to come in the form of a report at budget time. And, and we will continue to apply for grants, but it's going to be contingent on approval on a year-to-year basis on initiatives that we see necessary in that year. But it's not, it will not be built into the regular operating budget as we would for most services.
Okay, thank you, CEO Panasic. Okay, council, is there anything further? Okay, if there's nothing further from council, we will call the motion to question, please. So council, we have a motion that administration include additional clause 5.8. The town will maintain a wildland urban interface initiatives subject to available grants or municipal funding, include in policy PS 2306. Council, if you could please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Council, is there anything further? Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that council approve the protective services fire and rescue services level of service policy PS-2306 as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Did you want to speak to it?
Just simply, again, appreciate the level of service, better understanding that level of service and capturing everything that we do for our community and surrounding as well. So this is good for, budget time as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, just kind of a question. It says purpose that we're going to identify the level of standard for each service. And then for some of these things, it says we're going to provide these services up to a technician level. Is that clear enough? Like, what's that mean? Like, we're going to provide it up to a certain level of training?
Councillor Taylor, if I could just ask, what section is that?
521, 523, 531. I wonder, is that vague? Or do we need to define the level of training? Or is there only one level of training? Or does everybody get trained to a certain level? And can we afford to, are we training everybody to the highest possible level? Is that appropriate for a town our size?
Thank you,
So-
Councillor Taylor. To administration.
Maybe too many questions. I don't know.
Through the chair to all of council. It's not a bad question. I appreciate the question. In the definition section in section 6, technician level is defined as our members may initiate a combination of actions to bring the incident under control and to an end. And to that effect, if we say, or council has said that we will provide a service to the technician level, it is my obligation through our SOPs and our training programs to train our firefighters to that level so that they are capable of performing that function to mitigation. If it's at an operations level, we're equipped and trained to control the situation and ask for outside help. In an awareness level training, we surround it, we isolate it, and call in the experts to deal with that. So it's just a general statement as to the level of training that we provide for each individual function. Does that answer your question, sir?
But it's still kind of vague. Like we have 35 volunteer firefighters. At what level are each one of them trained to? And are they all trained to the highest level? Or are the idea to train like the top 25% to the professional level, the next 25% to this level so that they can do these functions, and the beginner people get trained to this level? That's sort of what I was getting at, I think.
Yeah, and through the chair, the town of Hinton is in a very luxurious position. All of our firefighters are trained to the NFPA standard 1001, which is a professional firefighter standard. Within the first year of their employment with the department, they are trained to that standard. So in every other function that we do for like hazardous or dangerous goods response, they're trained to the operations level, which is a very defined level service from a fire department. It's very well established. It's a North American standard that we meet as a town. And we build that into our training budget every year.
Why did you use the word luxurious?
Through the chair, I use that word because not every community in this province, it actually attains that level of training. I consider it very luxurious. We have a very professionally trained fire service.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm looking forward to supporting the item on the floor. For myself, what this essentially does is it says, here's the things that we have been doing. We'll continue to do them, but it's cognizant of what the reality is facing us. I think this last summer, the summer before, they're good examples of that. One of the increasing threats communities are seeing are increased wildfire interfaces with surrounding communities. And so the amendment that was made, I think, clearly addresses that. And we're saying that as a community, this is the way we want to move forward. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Magoon. Council, is there anything further? Seeing nothing further from council, if we could see the motion, please. So council, we do have a motion that council approve the protective services, fire and rescue services level of service policy, PS 2306 as amended. Council, if you could please vote now. That is also carried unanimously. Thank you, council. That brings us to action item 6.3 protective services municipal enforcement LOS policy PS 2307 to administration.
I will pass this over to Mr. DeBoudrup as well.
Thank you. The second item for council consideration is, of course, the protective services municipal enforcement level of service policy PS 2307. The level of service policy presented is a first-time policy to outline the services provided by the RCMP, our community peace officers, and bylaw enforcement. Highlighted in this level of service policy are the emergency responses, patrols, enforcement, community engagement, peace officer appointments, and RCMP appointments. Consideration was given to the current levels of services that are supported today. And the policy recognizes the fact that the community peace officer authorities and appointments come from the province of Alberta. And they must adhere to the Alberta Public Security and Peace Officer Policy and Procedures. Likewise, the RCMP derive their authority from the RCMP Act, and the RCMP members are subject to the orders, command, and control of the RCMP Commissioner. Administration is recommending that council approve the level of service PS 2307. And Mr. Chair, with that, if there are any questions, you may answer them.
Great, thank you for that, Chief Beaudrop. I do have some questions, comments. Councillor Taylor.
Financial implications. Does that include the photo radar contributions to the budget? The reason I ask is that the revenue is only $500,000, yet last week we were given information that we were doing 500 tickets a month at one particular corner, which means that corner could be like a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 corner. So is photo radar accurately portrayed here?
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. To administration.
Just looking to see where you're reading that.
Councillor Taylor, can you?
Second page, page 34.
Where, sorry?
Page 34 of the agenda package under financial implications.
So through the chair, that those numbers that are reflected there reflect the municipal enforcement, which is bylaw enforcement, and the RCMP. It does not reflect the ATE, automatic traffic enforcement.
Okay. That's not part of your budget. No.
That's not part of this report.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the council approve the protective services municipal enforcement level of service policy PS 2307. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Did you want to speak to it at all?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, we do have a motion now. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to it? Any comments, questions, or discussion? Oh, Councillor Haas.
Yeah, again, I guess just like the previous, having this service level policy now, has something for us to reference also what we do for our community when it comes to law enforcement. And it gives an opportunity to look at this policy in the future, whether we want to change it, increase it, decrease it, or whatever. So at least it gives us an idea. And it gives us an idea for, again, of course, budget as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have one question, and it's under background, where it says the protective services municipal enforcement level of service policy. And then at the very end, it says defined services provided by policing, RCMP, community police officers. Should that be peace officers?
Thank you, Councillor Race. To administration.
Through the chair, you are absolutely correct. It should say community peace officers.
Okay.
Okay, good, Councillor Race.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Oh, Councillor Race, are you back in queue? No, okay. Councillors, is there anything further on the proposed motion? Okay, seeing nothing further from council, we will call to question the motion that council approve protective services municipal enforcement level of service policy PS 2307. Council, if you could please vote now. That is also carried unanimously. Thank you, council. That brings us to action item 6.4, traffic bylaw number 1179. Administration.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass this over to Mr. DeBoudrop, but before I do, I just wanted to ensure that council was aware it was addressed, but it was shortly before the meeting that the Chamber of Commerce has reached out with a concern specific to the parking on Carmichael Lane and Smith Street. The request that we received from the chamber was to not proceed with third reading in order for the chamber and in partnership with the town to do further get some further information regarding the business impacts of that specific decision. So I just wanted to pass that along to council to make sure that they were aware, but I'll pass that over to Mr. DeBoudrop.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. Mr. Chair and members of council, this afternoon, I'm presenting for council consideration traffic bylaw 1179. Committee of the Whole reviewed this document at the August 28, 2023 meeting and directed administration to bring the completed bylaw forward to a regular meeting of council with additional information regarding the estimated costs for signage changes that would be required upon implementation of this bylaw. Highlights of this bylaw include lowering the speed limit on residential streets to 40 kilometers an hour unless otherwise posted. Arterial, I have difficulty saying this word, but sorry, arterial, the main roads such as Mountain, Switzer, Hardesty, and others, as well as strictly industrial and commercially dominated roads remain unaffected by this change. E-bikes. E-bikes have been included into the sections referencing bicycles and bicycle use. The bylaw reflects the regulations of the province under the Traffic Safety Act, and there are no financial implications with the inclusion of e-bikes into this bylaw. Electric cart use, excuse me. Electric cart use. Pine Valley Lodge was given permission in 2022 for the use of electric carts for transporting residents on specific routes in the Valley District. This information and an approved route map is included into this bylaw. Parking on one side of Carmichael and Smith. Administration is recommending that parking only be permitted on the south side of both Carmichael Avenue and Smith Street. This proposal is to increase pedestrian and driver safety by relieving congestion at peak periods of the day along those routes. At the Committee of the Whole meeting, I may have left council with the impression that we might be able to permit parking in both directions on one side of the road, and I committed to looking into that and found that contrary to what I think and what I thought we could do, we may not. Parking is only permitted on the right of the center line close to the curb. That is a regulation under the use of the highway and rules of the road regulations. Our municipality cannot lessen a provincial regulation. So we would restrict parking to the one side, but they would all be in the same, pointed in the same direction. Otherwise, it would be a violation. The cost of signage to purchase signs, posts, and install for both the 40-kilometer in residential areas change and the no parking signs on Carmichael and Smith is estimated to be around $11,000. This does not include the labor involved for town staff to install those signs. The other main highlight is the change to the penalty costs outlined in Schedule 20A, which now align closer to the penalties assigned in the Provincial Traffic Safety Act. And I need to point out that there are two spelling errors that were found in Schedule 4B, which talks about the speed limits. Fleming has one M in it, not two, as I put in there. And Kelly Road has an E, it's EY, not just Y. So I would amend those before council approve those. And there's also a naming error on Schedule 13A, and I have to flip to 13A it mentions Terrace Road, Terrace Road is not a road that exists in Hinton, and that's a carry forward from the previous bylaw. It was named in the previous bylaw as well. The road that is being referenced here is a road allowance on the west side of town near Woodley. And it's an unnamed road allowance. So I would need to remove Terrace Road from that schedule. And with that, Mr. Chair, if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you for that, Chief DeBeau. Council, Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to move that council give first reading to traffic bylaw number 1179. If I can quickly speak to it. This is a good start. I think that one thing that I've heard a lot in our community is our traffic safety, and what's brought forward to us from administration, I think highlights some of those issues, speed being one of them, some other areas as well. It clarifies some things. I understand that there are some concerns with the parking of a couple of areas that are presented, but giving it first reading at this point gets it started, gets it out there, and potentially then I'm not sure where the rest of council is on the rest of the readings, but at least this is the start of it. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Haas. Council, we do have a motion before us now. I have Councillor Taylor.
I'll
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of first reading tonight. Ideally for myself, where that will get us is nicely placed to have a conversation in a little bit more detail and depth with the rest of the community. There's a lot of weight to this particular piece of bylaw that's before us. So I want to make sure that that's done transparently with the public in full consultation, that we move it forward. But certainly first reading tonight to get that conversation started seems quite reasonable to me. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will support this motion. I do have a question, which I will ask my question after the motion is, the vote is held, if you prefer.
It's up to you.
Okay,
Councillor Race.
I'll get it out of the way right now.
As long as it's, it's related to the motion, obviously. Yeah.
It
Go ahead.
certainly is.
Yep.
Okay, on the attachment, page 27 of 38. And I just want to be clear here. I'm not meaning to be rude, or just to be clear. So it talks about schedule 4-E, 15 kilometers an hour. All mobile home parks would be 15 kilometers an hour. So I look at a mobile home park as private property, just like Trican is. And maybe I'm wrong here. It's my understanding that we can't go into a mobile home park and say, clean it up. This is a hazard to your neighbors on each side. And if you don't clean it up, we're gonna. But we can go in and dictate the speed limit.
So just before I go to administration, Councillor Race, what section is that?
It's the attachment to this bylaw.
Yeah, what section?
I'm gonna have to. 27 of 38.
Schedule 4D.
69 of 84. Schedule 4E.
Okay. Okay, thank you. To administration.
Through the chair to council, we can regulate the speed limit within the rear lanes, back alleys, campsites and trailer parks, and the mobile home parks, even though it's private property. The roadway itself it is a private road, but we can stipulate a speed limit on at those locations.
So may I, sir?
Mhm.
The roads within the mobile home park, we can dictate the speed limit. We can't say fix them because we can't even go 15. But we can tell you how fast you're going to drive on those roads. Oh, Alrighty, thanks.
You, Councillor Race, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I'm okay with going to first reading, perhaps even second reading. But I believe there are concerns with this document related to parking on Carmichael and Smith as well. So I guess my question would be, how many of the 10 hotels, 21 restaurants, and 17 other businesses that will be affected by the changes we're going to do to Carmichael and Smith? And there's more changes than just parking on one side. There's speed limit changes there too, have been consulted.
Administration.
Through the chair to all of council. None of them were directly consulted as to the change. Back almost a year ago, when we started looking at this bylaw, I was directed to look into what options there would be to relieve congestion on Carmichael and Smith. And as one of the objectives of opening this bylaw. So that's what we did. We looked into the number of complaints that we've received, but we have not consulted with the individual building or business owners along those stretches. No.
Okay.
Thank you.
So just so you know, my intent would be to vote for the first reading to get it out there. And I think that's important to get it into the community. Then my intent would be to follow up on the executive directors with the Chamber of Commerce to direct administration to do a consultation with or without them to the businesses that will be affected on any changes, and bring that back to us either in a report to committee of the whole or next time we do reading number 2. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Following up on that, then I guess a question to administration, if they are prepared to answer it today, with that request from the chamber and a suggestion to partner with the chamber to get some additional information on input from the businesses that may be affected, when would we possibly see that?
Through the chair to members of council. So I don't have an exact date for you, but I think our first step would be to get in touch with the Chamber of Commerce and to work alongside them in order to conduct some of that engagement along Carmichael and Smith, I believe. So I don't have a specific date, but I don't see this as taking a great deal of time. I would say 2 to 3 weeks, I think, would be a reasonable timeline if I had to guess.
Okay, so just to follow up then, I guess it would probably be reasonable to say then that if this bylaw passes first reading today, that information would be available to help inform second reading when it comes to council.
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent, thank you. Council, are there any other comments or questions before we go to the motion? Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To administration, 40 kilometers an hour, where did that come from? It seems to be a popular number among other municipalities.
Through the chair to all of council, that's 40 kilometers an hour. There is a movement across Canada actually to move to 40 kilometers an hour in residential streets only. Not all your streets, just the residential streets. There's been a lot of studies that reducing the speed from 50 to 40 will reduce the potential for serious injuries with vehicle versus pedestrian or vehicle versus vehicle. The impact energy is greatly reduced by reducing the speed by 10 kilometers an hour. You reduce it by 20 kilometers an hour, it reduces that potential for injury even more. But the happy number that people, most municipalities seem to land on is 40 kilometers an hour. It's not a great movement. And in most residential areas where in modern planning and everything, the streets are not getting wider, they're getting narrower. So it's a good number to work with. Doesn't mean that people will adhere to it all the time in residential areas, but perhaps in some of our areas, it will get people doing less than 50 for sure. But 40 kilometers an hour is the number that is pretty much accepted and has been studied greatly. That's the right number for a residential area.
Thank you,
City of
sir.
Edmonton has gone to 40 kilometers an hour. I believe Rocky View County has gone to 40 kilometers an hour. Leduc. There's many communities within Alberta that are making this move.
I do agree with you that the streets nowadays in new subdivisions seem to be narrower, not wider. Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question.
Sorry,
about-
1 second, Councillor Haas. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question about the speed limit and understanding. In Schedule 4B, which is 25 of 38, it talks about the 50-kilometer zones. I'm just curious the thoughts on, because I'm looking at some of these and I know we're talking about 40 for residential, but a street like Mountain Street, for example, this is one street that I do get a lot of comments on about the speed that people drive that particular street and the fact that there's a lot of houses that butt up against Mountain Street. They're backing out. There's lots of, I walk it every day. There's lots of kids out on bikes and things like that. So I guess and that's just one example. But I mean, when I look at McKinney, I look at, there's a few others, Hardesty. Why 50 for those and not considering those also being 40 as well?
Through the chair, most of those roads that are listed there are either on that Schedule 4B are either industrial roads or largely commercial roads, with the exception of Hardesty, which currently has no parking on that street. No street parking. So it makes sense that you could go a little faster there. There's no parked vehicles that little ones can pop out from behind. Mountain is an exception. There is parking on Mountain, but it is one of the longest and it's a well-used feeder road for the rest of that entire north, the hill area. So it's considered an arterial road. I said it right. Arterial road. And it feeds a lot of the residential roads feed into that one. So I left that one alone. It could be, if it is council's desire, to change that to 40, but I would recommend not.
If I may follow up, and that's reasonable. I appreciate that, and this is why I'm in favor of first reading and getting some more input from the public as well in regards to certain areas, because that's my experience. Is it is quite a well-traveled road, but this also leads to a lot of excess of speeding on that area too. So that's all. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, is there anything further? Okay, seeing nothing further from council, we do have a motion that council give first reading to traffic bylaw number 1179. Council, if you could please vote now. That is carried unanimously. Councillor Taylor.
I'd like to put the motion forward that I told you about, to direct administration to consult with businesses regarding any Traffic Safety Act changes to Carmichael and Smith roads and streets. And to bring that information to the second reading whenever that occurs.
Okay.
Direct administration to consult with businesses for any Traffic Safety Act changes to Carmichael. Traffic bylaw changes on Carmichael and Smith. Road, street, yes, and to bring that information to the second reading that we have. Thanks. If I may,
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Did you want to speak to it?
just briefly. So I do say traffic safety bylaw changes because there's a significant speed limit change on Smith as well, in addition to the parking changes. And I think this is a very major change because I did my own hokey calculations and found that there are about 60 semi-truck parking spots that'll be eliminated, 30 on Carmichael, 30 on Smith, in addition to dozens of smaller parking stalls. And that potentially could have a bit effect on the businesses of 10 hotels, 21 restaurants, and 17 other businesses that, and I didn't count like the government offices there. And what I want to avoid, if they're all okay with those changes, super, but I want to avoid the unintended consequences that faced, say, the towns of Fox Creek and Grand Cache when they went after those kind of issues too hard in their communities. Fox Creek went after those kind of things, and the truckers just bypassed and drove around Fox Creek for 6 months until town council changed back to the way it was. Grand Cache tried to eliminate parking in the inner square. The businesses went out of town and established their own camps. So we don't want unintended consequences for that. And we want to be careful about taking away too many parking steps and being as specific as we can to whatever the problems are, especially when we're going to engage in a multi-million-dollar project that's going to bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the town, and that's going to have tons of parking. So, yeah, if we have a parking congestion problem, perhaps talking with businesses, and that might bring us other solutions. Like maybe we could expand parking or something, expand the roadway, or address some of those concerns that we have a little more specifically. Yeah, and maybe we have to just embrace who we are, like a town with a highway that has millions of cars going by. And these are, after all, service roads, and put up with a little bit of inconvenience. That might be just part of the cost of being a town on a highway. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Chief DeBodrop, did you have a question or a comment?
Yes, through the chair. I think council may be under the impression that there's a speed limit change on Smith and Carmichael. The speed limit currently is 30 kilometers an hour on Smith and Carmichael.
Councillor Taylor, did you want to respond or?
Yeah, no, I saw a 50-kilometer sign on Smith yesterday. You drive up Smith, you turn right where the right at the corner where the recycle thing is. You go right. There's a 50-kilometer sign sitting right there on Smith. Did I see it, Ron?
Well, I will commit to council that I will check that on my way home.
I might have made a mistake though.
If it is, it's signed wrong. Because
I looked at it quickly.
Bylaw, or the current bylaw, rather, it's supposed to be posted as 30 kilometers an hour.
Okay, if I'm wrong, then my wording for this just covers the changes to the traffic on one side of the road, so it's general enough.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Go to Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And maybe this is a second or a different emotion to this one, but I'm just curious. I'm in favor of this, to have that conversation. My question to administration, though, with that conversation, is it also captured in this direction that other options would be also brought to the table for different parkings? Because this just says consult, bring that information, which I'm in agreement, but I want to make sure that we're also giving you the latitude that, you know, with that information, what are some other options that you've heard from the resident that might be more accommodating? So does that require a second motion, or maybe it's an addition to this motion? But does administration, what's their plan with this?
Thank you, Councillor Haas. To administration.
Through the chair, I can take this one. I can say that we're not married to any one solution. So if there are other solutions out there, we'd be happy to consult and look at different ones. We understand what the problem is, which is congestion along those areas. So if there's other solutions out there that the business community or anyone else may have, we'd be happy to consider them and to provide that to council.
Okay, if I may then,
Mhm.
yeah, as long as that's understood, because I don't want to go and get this and then send it away again with other, and delay it even further. But if that's the intent of, I'm comfortable with that. So thank you.
Seeing no one else in queue to speak, I actually do want to speak to that. And I appreciate that administration has promised that they will bring forward some options. I would actually be more comfortable if that was captured in a motion. I appreciate consulting the businesses and being able to get some feedback from them on whether they would not support one side of the street parking on those roads. That said, though, the other side of the argument is the concern that I've had voiced to me by several different people in the community that they don't feel safe traveling, especially on Carmichael Lane early in the morning, that there's just too much traffic and it's too narrow, and it's simply not safe for two vehicles to be able to pass each other when there's heavy truck traffic parked on both sides of Carmichael. In addition to that, I've had concerns addressed to me about pulling out from some of those businesses onto Carmichael Lane when there's heavy truck traffic parking the sight lines. They have to get so far out onto the street before they can even see someone coming that they've nearly been hit by oncoming traffic before they could even see the traffic was there. So if it's the will of council to continue to allow parking on both sides of Carmichael and Smith, I mean, that's okay. But I would want to see some options for what could be done to help improve traffic flow and safety on those if the continuation of two side of the street parking is going to be a factor moving forward. So we'll see what comes out of that. But and we do currently have this motion before us. So Councillor Taylor.
I agree completely with both of you. And I too would like to see, can I change this a little bit?
It's your motion if you would like to, sure.
Sure, thanks. To direct administration to consult with businesses for any traffic bylaw changes on Carmichael Lane and Smith Street, and to bring information, including options to manage traffic congestion to a second reading. I think that kind of covers what you're talking about. Including options to manage traffic congestion to a second reading. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Just before I go to Councillor Haas, I did have one clarifying question about the motion. He might be nitpicking, but I'm assuming with where it says to consult with businesses, you're referring to businesses that are actually on Carmichael and Smith. It's not open blanket to consult with businesses, correct?
Affected by the traffic changes too. That's not just necessarily businesses on Carmichael and Smith, by the way. It's also behind, say, for example, I hate to mention a business, but the one where we all like our coffee, there's a street back there where the truck traffic, when the main street gets too busy, they start to park back there. So there's affected businesses back there as well. I would think they might be consulted as well. But beyond that, I don't think it would be appropriate. I think that would be the level of the consultation.
Okay, thank you for that. And that's why I asked the question. Maybe there should be some parameters around what businesses should and shouldn't be consulted on this regarding this motion, but I'll leave that for now. Councillor Haas.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I appreciate this addition and the words of Mr. Chair. Because I too, I guess it's, for me, it's a balance. I understand some of the concerns with the chamber and the businesses, but it's also the safety as well. You know, and it is a very congested area. And it does create, and I've seen myself and even myself avoiding that area at certain times of the day and doing other options because of that traffic flow. So I appreciate, you know, looking at this matter but looking at it through a lens of safety as well. Because the last thing, that's a responsibility also as a community to make sure our roads are safe for all residents, both visitors and residents of our community. So I appreciate this. We'll get some consultation, we'll get some options and move forward, you know, in the best fashion for that area. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have no one else in queue. If there are no further comments or questions, we will call the motion to question. Okay, seeing none, there's a motion before us that council, sorry, we could see the motion. There's a motion before us to direct administration to consult with businesses for any traffic bylaw changes on Carmichael Lane and Smith Street, and to bring information including options to manage traffic congestion to second reading. Just before I call this question, though, I am going to look to administration regarding the questions around businesses to consult. Does administration have enough clarity to be able to move forward with the motion as it's worded?
Through the chair, we could certainly include to consult with affected businesses for the traffic bylaw changes. But in absence of that, I think we're clear and yeah, we're clear on the intent and I'm okay with the motion as worded.
Okay, thank you for that, CEO Panasic. Okay, if there is no appetite from council to make any changes to it, then okay, we will call it to question. Motion to direct administration to consult with businesses for any traffic bylaw changes on Carmichael Lane and Smith Street, and to bring information including options to manage traffic congestion to second reading. Council, if you could please vote now. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, council. Councillor Taylor.
There have been a number of councillors that have used the word safety, so I can have a better understanding of whether the safety is perceived or real. How many accidents have these congestion issues caused on Carmichael or Smith?
Administration.
Through the chair to council. In 2023, we have had 165 complaints of incorrect parking, 7 fire calls, 3 of which we had difficulty getting the fire trucks to the fire because of the congestion of the semis. We've had 2 crosswalk incidents. They were near miss incidents with pedestrians stepping out into traffic because the sight lines were obscured. We've had 16 speeding incidents and 16 stop sign incidents on Carmichael alone. Smith is not as big of a concern because the sight lines aren't impacted as much. And most of the businesses along that stretch have a sufficient off-road parking. So a lot of the smaller vehicles are not on Smith Street. It's only semis that are parking there. So we haven't had a lot of complaints. In fact, we've had 5 in total for all of 2023 on Smith. That is just from municipal enforcement, bylaw enforcement. I couldn't get the RCMP numbers today. I apologize, but I could have those numbers for you for the second reading.
Yep, sure, that'd be useful. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that additional information. Just before I go to Councillor Haas, I really do appreciate that, because that brings the justification to the complaints that I've gotten from citizens showing that it's not just a perception thing, that there really is traffic safety issues, especially on Carmichael. And that's where I get most of the concerns that are brought to me are from Carmichael. So I think it's great that this is coming before us and we have the opportunity to be able to address it, hopefully in one way or another. I'm going to go to Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, yes, thank you for that info and that question, Councillor Taylor. It was a miss. I did not bring this up in our committee meeting when we first talked about it, but I would like to ask a question to administration, their thoughts on, and if they looked at one of the other traffic concerns is Highway 16 turning onto Jasper Street, but then onto Greg Avenue right away. And that, I'm wondering if administration has at all looked at that Greg Avenue, because what's happening is that they're turning right onto Jasper and then immediately turning right onto Greg. That causes some congestion there because a lot of vehicles can't make that turn so sharply that they're going into oncoming traffic. The other issue that I've seen a lot, if I may, is when people are turning, it's very difficult if you don't turn and look way behind you. They turn onto Jasper, but somebody coming off Greg, either going straight or left or right, doesn't always see that traffic that's turning right onto Jasper. And I've seen a number of near misses in that area. Other issue that I also see very often is people cutting through that gas station instead of, and totally missing the stop sign and cutting through there and cutting people off as they're coming out of that service. So I'm just wondering if administration at all looked at that area when they looked at this traffic bylaw and looked at possible solutions to this area. Because I mean, there's no parking on that street as well. But any comments on that?
Thank you, Councillor Haas, administration.
Through the chair, no, we didn't look at that specific location at all. I know what you're talking about. I visit that, I frequent that area a lot. That's not so much a bylaw, this bylaw, but maybe the road's design standard. There's a design problem there. It echoes down at Mountain, the same issue at Mountain Street with Greg Avenue as well, but I haven't addressed that in this bylaw.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, because I guess in my mind with that, and it opens up another question, but would it be better if Greg Avenue was a one-way, not a two-way, that they can enter into down by Mountain Street there and then enter route so that you're not turning into that lane? I don't know. So it's a good question. I don't know if that's a traffic bylaw issue or if that is a more of an infrastructure. I don't know, but it's just one area that I see personally, and I've heard a lot, of, and I don't know what the stats say, but I'm sure there's got to be a lot of near misses in that area. Especially too, if in their summer season, when people are lined up to fill with gas there as well, it's quite a congestion. So it's just, I should have brought it up during our committee meeting, but I thought it'd be an opportunity for at least to mention it and see if that's something administration might look into. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I have no one else in queue, but I would like to follow up on that. Understanding that the traffic bylaw is more of a high level overview of how traffic's handled in our community. When situations like this come to attentions of councillors where there's specific locations that citizens feel should be addressed, and I completely agree that this is one that's a traffic free for all through there. There's people coming in and out of that business location from all sides, onto Jasper, onto Greg, straight out to the highway, all kinds of weird stuff happening. So when things like that are reported or perceived, or what's the best way to bring that to administration to have it dealt with? Say open ASIC.
Through the chair to members of council, yes, my recommendation is just to, number one, if there are concerns from the public, to have them communicate that to us. We do keep track of those types of things, or to send those directly to Chief DeBeaudrop or myself. We can take a look. There are certain elements of the specifics that would be outlined through bylaw. For example, if it was mentioned to turn Greg Ave into a one-way, so major changes like that would be a bylaw discussion that would have to be had. But those smaller mitigation measures that we can look into would be taken care of by administration. So we can certainly take that back. Anecdotally, I agree with all the comments that are made on that specific section. But we can take a closer look at that and see if there's anything that we can do to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, administration. I guess the other question, and it always comes up, of course, but enforcement, because we're doing all these different things in enforcement. But I guess my question, and actually, it's that coming out of that one business, and I don't want to name any businesses, but there's a sign that says right there, do not turn right onto Jasper. And that always happens. I don't care how many times it happens. I guess, is our protective services, are they identifying certain areas and upping the enforcement in certain areas that we see multiple things? Because I have to admit, I've never seen, I see our protective services sitting on Switzer, they're getting the speeding, but there are certain other areas. Are we monitoring and are we enforcing those things? Because if we don't enforce them, it's not going to change, is my concern. So I guess in those areas, are we flagging them? Are we taking action to send the message that, hey, you can't do that? There's a sign there.
Councillor Haas to administration.
Through the chair to all of council, and Councillor Haas's question is a good question. The simple answer is yes. We track these complaints as we receive them. And if there is a notable change in one area, we increase our patrols. And without naming businesses' names or anything like that, that particular location, its peak periods are the same time as the school zones. And our municipal enforcement and the RCMP, for that matter, have an emphasis on enforcing in school zones during school zone times. And a lot of those go unseen, those infractions. If we see an infraction like that, of course, we would enforce it. If we receive numerous complaints, we would increase patrols in that area.
Okay. If I may just quickly follow up. I don't want to get off track. It just, when we talk about bylaws, traffic be one of them, any bylaw, it comes down to enforcement. And I think we want to make sure we're getting it right and that we're also matching what we're doing with that enforcement as well. So I appreciate, it is difficult, but I think, even if it's not, and this is just my opinion, I'm not directing, but even if it's not in the peak times, people are still going through theirs. If there's a vehicle sitting there waiting for it, people don't do it, then they know that they're watching. So that's all I have to say on the matter. But I mean, it's just, these are the things that we also have to consider on the other side of it too. So thank you.
See, Openasik.
Through the chair to members of council, we can bring some additional information on this specific item back, because if there have been studies that Miss Davy Campbell has informed me that we actually have looked at this specific location on new designs at one point in time through Associated Engineering, and they have recommended some traffic safety measures that would require a bylaw change, and that was in the form, I believe, of a roundabout. But we can certainly provide the engineering assessment on that specific location.
Okay, thank you, CEO Openasik. Council, is there anything further? Okay, seeing nothing further, we will move on to action item 6.5, Hinton Water Treatment Plant, Alberta Community Partnership ACP grant application. Oh, sorry, before we do that, Councillor Taylor.
If possible for the younger members of council that we could have a biological break.
Sure. Yep, we'll take a brief recess and reconvene at 5:45.
Thank you.
Here, everyone, we will call today's. Sorry. Thank you, everyone. We'll call today's regular council meeting back to order. We are now at action item 6.5, Hinton Water Treatment Plant Alberta Community Partnership ACP grant application to administration.
Thank you, through to the chair and all of council. Just as part of the background, on June 6th, administration brought forward the report request for the Hinton Water Treatment Plant Condition Assessment and Contingency Readiness Request. At that time, council directed administration to proceed with the water treatment plant condition assessment and contingency readiness report and funding request. The funding request spoken about indicated that council set aside $200,000 at that time for in the utility reserve fund to facilitate the report. As part of that same report, administration committed to the pursuit of granting of funding opportunities for preparing that report. The ACP grant portal has commenced opening and accepting applications for eligible projects, which this would be one of them. And the project would be related to intermunicipal collaboration. That's one of their criteria. The deadline being October 2nd of this year for 2023. Administration plans to collaborate with Yellowhead County with the aim of partnering for granting opportunities in support of addressing and meeting the potable water demands for the region. This report's before council requesting support for the submission of an application through ACP for the maximum of $200,000 with the focus of the project recognizing the importance of ensuring safe, adequate, and sustainable water management, and to ensure we in the region are positioned to address future operational and infrastructure requirements. The expected project output would be a regional water services feasibility study to use in future infrastructure planning and updates to the 10-year capital plans. This will provide critical water infrastructure models, detailed designs, and recommendations that will inform proactive water management strategies. The condition of municipal service delivery infrastructure is a key element of municipal and regional sustainability. And it's critical consideration for growth and attracting investment to this region. The anticipated partnership with the Yellowhead County is proposing that following work plan as outlined in your report. This allows us a lot of flexibility then to be nimble and move forward in whichever way is indicated with the information provided. The confirmation of support from Yellowhead County is subject to their council also making a resolution in support of the application submission. Administration has reached out to Yellowhead County to seek their support, and I would like to pass it over to CAO Panasic to elaborate on that.
Thank you, Council. As Ms. Weber had indicated, we have reached out to Yellowhead County. We will be following up with them once again with the request that this request go forward, likely in early October, and that will be sent in support of our grant application for the regional component of this grant requirement.
Thank you, CAO Panasic, for that elaboration. This report and grant funding positions us for future grants to address our water treatment plant and potable water requirements. For the purpose of the grant application, Council, you may note that there's additional information in the motion that we wouldn't typically see, but this is required as it's an application with two partners, and it must identify which partner would be taking the lead on the project as the project manager. Therefore, you're seeing some different language in the actual motion that administration of the town of Hinton would be the custodian of the grant project and related administrative requirements. It is also of note that there is no matching funding requirement from the town of Hinton to participate in this grant application, nor would it be of our partner for Yellowhead County. I'm open to any questions council may have.
Great, thank you for that. I have Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make the recommended action and move that council directs administration to submit a 2023-2024 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application in support of the water treatment plant feasibility study, allocating administration of the custodian of the grant project and related compliance requirements with no matching financial contribution as discussed. And that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Did you want to speak to it at all? No. Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Does this give us enough information to flesh out like the options for what we want to do? And when we pick an option, then we'll have to do like more study on that option. But if the option is an independent water treatment plant, this will give us this will flush out option A, B, C, D, whatever they are. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, to the administration.
Yes, thank you through the chair to Councillor Taylor and all of council. Yes, this would provide us with scenarios for evaluating what are the best options for the town of Hinton moving forward.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, is there anything further before we call the motion to question? Okay, seeing nothing further from council, there is a motion before us that council directs administration to submit a 2023-24 Alberta Community Partnership Grant application in support of the water treatment plant feasibility study, allocating administration as the custodian of the grant project and related compliance requirements with no matching financial contribution as discussed. Council, please vote now. And that is carried unanimously. Council, is there anything further on this matter before we move on? Okay, seeing nothing further, that moves us to action item 6.6, committee of the whole date to administration.
Through the chair to members of council, we are recommending that next week's committee meeting be moved to Monday, September 25th. And that's just to accommodate. We do have a few councillors who will be attending the Alberta Municipalities Conference, and we'll be missing two. Now, although we'll meet quorum, we'd only have three. So we're recommending that Monday would be a better date.
Hey, thank you for that, CEO Panasic. Council, are there any comments, questions, or discussion? Councillor Haas.
No, I'll make the motion if Ms. Davy Campbell has it ready to move. I don't know what the wording is, but to move thank you. Date change for the committee of the whole meeting September 26th to Monday, September 25th, 2023. So I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Did you want to speak to it?
No, well, just, I mean, it makes sense. We don't want to, postpone or to move the meeting. We've got a lot of stuff going on. So this accommodates Alberta municipalities for those councillors. So just makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, we have a motion before us. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing nothing from council. The motion that administration change the date for the committee of the whole meeting from September 26, 2023 to Monday, September 25th, 2023. Council, please vote now. That is carried unanimously as well. Thank you, everyone. So we will be committee of the whole on Monday next week. Is there anything further on this matter before we move on? Okay, seeing nothing additional, that brings us to notices of motion. 7.1 Recreation Center discussion. Councillor Haas, I'll hand it over to you. Want to key your mic?
Oh, sorry.
Yep. No.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my intent is to have a conversation prior to our budget 2024 as to recreation in our community and what it looks like. I understand that with a conversation with administration, there was a plan to bring this conversation to our retreat. Our retreat has changed. I'm interested to see if council would like to hear that part of the retreat before 2024 in regards to recreation, whether it be the center or other options. But, this is a matter that has been discussed and kicked around for a very long time. And I I think it's an opportunity to take a look at it. I know we have a lot going on and a lot of things happening in our community. But I think this is a major thing that has been on everybody's radar for a long time, and it needs to be flushed out and decided on at some point, what are we going to do with this? So that's my intent, is to bring that to next regular for a motion of council. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Haas. I don't believe, sorry, I'd look to administration. There's no additional action for that. Then that'll just come forward at next regular, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to section 8, reporting 8.1 council reports. I'll start over to my left, Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, my apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last night we had our board meeting for the library. We had another in-depth conversation in regards to our reserve policy and the draft. I think we've landed on the final of it. We're meeting again next week. I understand that our administration there has to have their papers in and stuff for budget as of the 25th. So we're going to meet again as a board next week and finalize that draft. And also we talked about our budget and anything that might come from that as well. One highlight that I want to share, if it is, but we have added that in the future, the policy will state that any operational surplus will be placed in a sub-reserve that will then go into next year's operational budget for the library. So we've now will not be putting surplus into reserves like we have in the past to avoid any, but there will still be a reserve ask in the budget because we aren't using that surplus anymore, that we can build it up. So that's the intent, but that'll be again, we'll be coming to council later on, but I wanted to share that with council at this point. We also had a HIAC, the administrators meeting last week. We have our final Hinton Youth Advisory Committee meeting coming up next week. It's our final for this term, and we're looking to again recruit more, but we had an in-depth conversation of what the next term will look like and had some great ideas and different things to bring to the youth. So yeah, had that conversation. So that's all I have to report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor or Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Taylor.
Oh. I did go to the Mountain Pine Beetle Control Committee, and that was a control committee that was established throughout the outbreak. And it's a pretty high profile committee with ADMs and chief foresters and directors there. So there was an opportunity to discuss or talk to those people just informally about a bunch of issues, including the wildfire guy. But of course, mountain pine beetle is no longer an issue. It peaked in 2019 at a very high level, and now it's down to less than 95%. So they did talk about replacing the Mountain Pine Beetle Control Committee because there's hardly any need for it anymore, not really being a problem. My hope would be that they would maybe replace it with some sort of committee on wildfire prevention and control that would include municipal involvement, at least from the fire affected or for communities that are surrounded by forests, right? So there's probably a handful of us around the province that have a strong stake in that. I hope that something provincial would be started so that we can all collectively get together and exchange ideas, but who knows? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Just before I go to Councillor Race, I guess I would have a question about that. I would fully support transitioning that Mountain Pine Beetle Committee to a wildland fire discussion committee. Did a call go out for any formal support from member communities on that, or what?
No, but I think it might be appropriate that we put forward a motion to ask the acting mayor or the mayor of Hinton to send correspondence into that to that effect to, whoever is appropriate, probably the ADM of forestry, that this is something that we see that it could productively transition into.
Mhm.
So could I make that motion?
Sure, yeah.
I move that council direct the mayor to send a letter into the ADM of forestry in regards to transitioning the Mountain Pine Beetle Committee into a fire prevention committee with municipal involvement from communities that are affected in surrounded by forests. A wording to that effect, and that we would send that in not only to the ADM, but we would CC that to every community that has a community with a forest around it, right? White Court, Edson, Slave Lake, Fort McMurray, then maybe they could do the same. Then we get some involvement, we get our ideas in there.
I agree. Thank you for that suggestion and motion, Councillor Taylor. I would look to administration. Yeah, you're gonna have to.
I don't have the
back to
wording very
those.
good, but direct, if anybody can help me with wording, the council direct the mayor to send a letter to the ADM forestry or ADM of, forestry or whatever the department's called, probably that's good enough. Regarding, transitioning the Mountain Pine Beetle Control Committee. During transitioning the Mountain Pine Beetle Control Committee, into a, fire prevention committee with municipal involvement for communities that are surrounded by forests and face wildfire threat. We could throw rationale into that. I think that would be a productive letter.
Mhm. I agree. Thank you for that, Councillor Taylor. Council, we do have a motion before us. Are there any comments or questions? Nope, Councillor Haas.
Yeah, just quickly, I'll be definitely in favor of this. I mean, the collateral damage that is out there from the mountain pine beetle and the threat that poses, in the future to our communities that are surrounded by it. This is an opportunity then to explore that and maybe do some provincial advocacy to how do we mitigate that. So no, I'm in total support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. I'd be in support of this as well. I think this is kind of a natural transition for that committee to switch from, the natural threat of the mountain pine beetle affecting forest land communities in the province to transition over to wildfire assessment prevention activities. I think it's just a natural transition. I think that's a good idea. And thank you, Councillor Taylor, again for bringing that forward. Council, if there's no other comments or questions regarding the proposed motion, if we could see it and we'll call the question. The motion that council direct the mayor to send a letter to the ADM forestry regarding transitioning the Mountain Pine Beetle Control Committee into a fire prevention committee with municipal involvement for communities that are surrounded by forest and face wildfire threat. Council, if you could please vote now. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you for that, Council. Councillor Taylor, did you have anything further to report? Okay, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So every month, our manager from the museum, Margaret Schultz, she presents us with a manager's report. And I thought it would be pretty good to share with you what that report is saying. So the museum continues to apply for grants. The last grant that they applied for was the Alberta Community Initiatives Program for $10,000. Another thing that they're busy doing right now is getting ready to present to council for their civic agency funding. Something else that we're seeing at the museum is they have hired a temporary collections manager, James Summerfelt, and he will be with the museum until the end of January. A couple other things that I think are really important is the museum will have a new sign put up on the highway, and that sign is going to be going up when we hang the new silhouettes. So it'll give people a bit more of an idea of where our museum is and how to get to it. Something that I think everybody's going to find really exciting right now is they're going to be bringing back the forging activities at the museum. So if you've ever wanted to make an axe, you want to get a hold of the museum. I believe there's only 6 people in the forging event. It fills up really, really quick. It's a wonderful opportunity to make an axe and work your arm. Okay, something else. Margaret is really invested in making partnerships. So she's meeting with the library to discuss program partnerships with the library. Something else that I'm really happy to see with the museum is they're going to start renting out that room in the lower of the building. Very nice room. And they've got rental activity happening there. And last thing I want to add is the museum is very, very heavily involved with the Hinton Youth Advisory Council and doing very good work there. And that's it, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Race. As for myself, I have nothing to report this week. So that will bring us to Chief Administrative Officer reporting and status report. CEO Panasic.
Thank you, Chair, to the rest of council. The only thing I have to report today is that tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. there is a open house for the affordable housing units, and so I would encourage any councillors who have some time to go to do, and they'll be touring council as well as the community on those affordable housing units, and the parking lot has been paved and it looks really good. So we're hoping to have council and the community attend.
Okay, thank you for that, CEO Panasic. Just before we move on, there is one question that I had that I should have asked earlier, but I neglected. My apologies. With council accepting the resignation of Councillor LaBerge earlier in the meeting tonight, that leaves the position of Councillor open, and that it's potentially going to be included in the by-election. When will that formally be announced and a call for nominations be put out?
Thank you, Chair. I will turn to our returning officer with the specifics.
Through to all of council, the official will be tomorrow morning, as the resignation was made official this evening at council. We are set to update the website and have the call out for nominations for the 2 seats. Our formal advertising, the required 2-week period, will be in the legislation says it must be in the print media with the largest circulation in your area. So it will be in there. The October 2nd issue, I believe, is the first, and then following the next week. And then there's the 2-week period to accept before nominations close on the 19th. And it will be for both mayor and 1 council seat.
Great, thank you very much. So just to clarify then, nominations can be filed as early as tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Great, thank you for that. Councillor Magoon?
Yeah, just building off that question quick. If members of the public or if members of council want to inquire about the current status of any potential nominations that have come through, is that something that has to wait publicly until the termination of the closing date? Or can that just be made by way of a public inquiry, an email or a phone call to administration?
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. To administration.
Thank you for the question. The nomination papers are available to the public, access upon request. We cannot allow anyone to take photos of them. We cannot allow anyone to ask for copies of them. We can certainly provide the information over the phone if you contact our legislative services clerk. But we do prefer, if people are interested, to come down and ask to see the papers, which we're allowed to do.
Thank you. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to confirm, the nomination shut off is October 19th.
Close of nominations is October 19th at 12 p.m. noon. If there are any nominations for a seat where there is only one nomination and one seat to be filled, we can immediately acclaim that seat or that vacancy as filled at the close of nominations. If there are more than one nomination for a particular seat, then we move forward with the by-election on November 19th.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. Councillor Taylor.
But I believe the fire chief had some information about that speeding on that road that he'd like to report on. Would you like to report on that right now?
To administration, is there anything that you'd like to speak to?
I owe Councillor Taylor a coffee.
That's all you have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, council, is there anything further? Seeing nothing, we do have one closed session item. Look for a motion. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we go in closed session, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, if we could see the motion, please. There is a motion that council move into closed session at 6:12. Council, please vote now. Okay, and that's carried unanimously. We'll be moving into closed session with a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 6:18. Thank you, everyone.